NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCARSky, and Jeff Davis.
What's up, race fans? Welcome back to another jam-packed episode of Mash the Gas podcast. My name is Kevin Batstone. NASCARSky will be joining us again next week. She's off. And, of course, Mr. Jeff Davis joining me shortly. We're here to break down the Iowa Corn 350 powered by Ethanol at the sold-out Iowa Speedway. Jeff, who mashed it?
Well, I'll tell you what, man, this one's pretty damn easy to call. You got to call it out for the number 24 of William Byron. Who knows if he would have made it on gas. He's lost out twice in the last few races on the last lap because he didn't have enough gas. But, man, he's the fifth driver with multiple wins, got his second win of the year, and led 141 laps. Have to give a big shout-out to the number 24 of Billy B.
You know what's crazy is that this was his first win since the Daytona 500. Like, the 24 has been in the conversation all year long, but he hasn't won a race since the Daytona 500, which is crazy because points-wise, he's sitting great. I mean, he's now the overall points leader in position to win the regular season championship. He's got 2 wins, so he's going to be seated decently in the playoffs. But, you know, Rudy Fugle and those guys had a couple bad weeks there. You know, the Coca-Cola 600, he dominated. The Brickyard, he runs out of gas on the back straightaway. Finally was able to stretch it a ton. And like I keep saying every single week, these guys are like, oh, we're not going to make it on fuel. Still have enough for the burnout. Still drove it back to victory lane.
Yeah, that's what I was laughing about, too. I was like, you know, short on fuel. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? He's running on fumes. We're talking about just an ounce or two of fuel. But yet he did have enough for that burnout. But, yeah, man, you're right. As far as drivers' points, it's still 300 drivers versus Denny Hamlin. So interesting to see Chase Elliott got bumped back down. He got used to that 1 week or two of being number one in the drivers' points. But William Byron, man, he had a great race. He led the most laps, and he crushed it. You know, well, another good shout out for the 24. We got to give Jeff Gordon and my mom, Miss Gloria. Today is Jeff Gordon and my mom's birthday. So I always call my mom on August 4th every year to wish her Jeff Gordon a happy birthday. She always gets a good laugh out of it. So happy birthday for the 24 and a win for the 24 as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. He was able to get that win pretty close to the VP's birthday, Mr. Jeff Gordon, 4-time champ, 93 wins. Pretty cool stuff there for HMS. I'll tell you what, though, man, Kyle Larson had a terrible day for Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, he was getting bounced around like a ping pong ball. I don't know if I've ever heard Kyle Larson that frustrated on the radio when he came on there. You know, those guys were having to calm him down. He was F-bombing this and that. He goes, I've been racing these guys clean, and I'm getting no respect. And just an overall tough day. I mean, he sat on pit road. Jeff, you and I both had him in fantasy. That was my last use on him for the year. He finished 28th. So kind of an uncharacteristic deal there for the 5 of Larson.
Yeah, he was. He was very, very frustrated. And I heard that same radio footage you were talking about. Just really had a bad day, you know. And unfortunately, off of what I think it was during stage 2 for one of those restarts, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson were side by side, and even Chase Elliott came down on Kyle Larson. I think that's when he kind of was putting out that language on there because he's like, "Man, I run everyone clean with her." Now his own teammates running him. You know, Chase Elliott came down low, got in the center. Kyle Larson got a little bit of a bump on that, and you know, it was kind of interesting to see that. I know it probably wasn't super intentional, but you know, Larson was just having a bad day. He got frustrated. So, you know, really unfortunate day for him. Yeah, you're right. I did have put him in my fantasy league as well. And I felt really bummed during the race because I'm like, man, I was actually out of William Byron and I'd rather have had him in than Kyle Larson.
Yeah, tough day for sure, but just aggressive racing out of the 9 of Chase Elliott. I mean, he's usually a relatively clean driver, and he split the middle there 3 wide and basically was just bouncing off of his teammate. Luckily, it didn't cut a tire down, but you know, that first stage was pretty much green the whole time. We really didn't see any cause of caution other than the stage break. And Brad Keselowski was just laser fast, man. He had the fastest lap of the race, 23.75, so he got himself an extra point there, and he got 2 playoff points, Jeff, for winning stages 1 and 2. Those guys are really, really starting to get better, I think. I mean, Chris Buescher wasn't as much in the combo, but Ryan Preece had to overcome a speeding penalty to come back to and finish 5th. And of course, BK, he got up to 3rd again. The amount of times he had to drive back up through the field after either a pit cycle or just getting caught on a different sequence than those guys. You know, he was fast for sure and led 68 laps. So, you know, no, it doesn't lock him in the playoffs, but those guys are headed in the right direction. They're getting better and better each week.
Yeah, winning those stages 1 and 2 really did help him out. And like I said, leading the 3rd most laps led with 68 laps is really cool. You know, they are starting to come together. It is cool to see. You know, RFK Racing's had been in a little bit of a slump, you know, during the majority of the year. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of strength in him right now. So, we've still got 3 races to go. I know he did pretty damn well at Watkins Glen, which is, obviously coming up next week. So it'll be really cool to see, Brad, if he can get up in there, because he definitely needs a win to get into the playoffs, Kevin. We know it. I mean, we were talking about this prior to recording, and, Brad Keselowski did have a 110 winless streak, a couple back years when he was not doing with RFK, and he was, with Penske still. But I think they've got it coming together, and it's really cool to see, because I really do like Ryan Preece in the 60 car as well. He's got top 10 finishes this season. I'd like to see him jump up above that playoff cutoff line. He's not too far behind between Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece. There are 23 points in the negative for Ryan Preece, 23 in the positive for Chris Buescher. But as far as old Brad Keselowski, unless he actually gets a win, he's not in, buddy.
Yeah, I was going to say there's 2 things that we can guarantee, and one of those is that Brad Keselowski has to win. I mean, he's 121 to the negative in 21st place. And the other thing that we know for a fact is that we will not see more than 16 winners with 3 spots remaining and 3 races to go to the playoffs, a road course, Richmond, and Daytona. So there's 3 opportunities there for those guys to lock himself in. I think Tyler Reddick's probably in the best position out of the guys trying to point their way in, especially with the schedule coming up ahead. Chris Buescher's probably shaking his boots a bit. I mean, he's going against his teammate here. But look, Buescher won Watkins Glen a year ago. So there's some momentum there that those guys can ride on. But I mean, look, Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, AJ Allmendinger, Brad Keselowski, John Hunter Nemechek, Carson Hocevar, Michael McDowell, any one of those guys can go out and win in the next 3 weeks and spring themselves into the playoff position, which then bumps Buescher out and puts Bowman on the cut. So I think this thing's going to get dicey. Obviously, I'm feeling SVG gets the win, here this weekend. So that, still leaves 3 guys that can point their way in. But who knows, Jeff? Anything can happen.
If I remember correctly, I think old SVG took second place last year at Watkins Glen. So in my opinion, he's probably the favorite to win next week. But he had a rough day as well, man. He had a couple just spun out and just did not have a good day. A minute ago, you were kind of talking about Carson Hocevar again, and he's still digging that hole, Kevin. I don't think he knows when to quit digging. Zane Smith tried to get it sounds like he tried to get a little bit of payback on Carson Hocevar, but I couldn't quite tell. But right now, Hocevar, man, he's has incidences with Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse. Blaney was kind of pissed off at him a little while back. And it's just, he's still not making any friends out there at all, so, well, if I was Carson Hocevar, I know, he likes to say it. I'm just going to call it like it is. I don't care about friends off the track or on the track. But he wasn't too happy. And Shane Van Gisbergen, old Gizzy, man, he was even pissed off a little bit. He's like, he called up to his spotter and said, I laughed because they actually kind of edited out. He goes, I had that wanker in the 77 just shove me 3 wide. And the spotter said, well, if we're here, we're going to line it up. But, he's not making any friends, Kevin.
No, that's for sure. I mean, week after week, there's always something going on with the 77. Now, he did come back from a spin, got in that mess with Zane Smith, and still finished P8. I mean, the kid can definitely drive up through the field and he can make some clean passes, but he makes a lot of bonehead passes. But, what I saw there was kind of similar to the situation that we saw earlier in the race, where we saw that simultaneous spin with old Seabell, and I think Reddick got caught up in that. Is those guys, as they were entering turn 1, we saw the same thing happen to Kyle Busch in practice. That transition from the old asphalt to the new asphalt, those bumps, get those guys loose. Kyle Busch tried to chase up the hill, wrecked his primary car, and that's kind of similar to what happened with Hocevar. But the fact remains, when you nose a guy, that narrow into turn 1, and you get loose and you wipe him out, that's still your fault. You've lost control of your race car and you've now compromised somebody else's day. Whether it was intentional or not, the aggressive move by the 77 still took out the 38, no matter which way you want to look at it.
Yeah, I'd agree. And one thing you kind of were talking about, with that spin with the 20 and the 45, that was Chase Briscoe's fault. And I don't think it was intentional, but he did get into the rear quarter panel of the 45 of Tyler Reddick and just gave him a little bit of a tap. And that was enough for him to get into the 20. And even post race, you heard the number 19 of Chase Briscoe. He even apologized. He's, man, I'm sorry to the 20 and the 45. That was definitely my fault. It wasn't intentional. Chase Briscoe, man, it is incredible to see what he's done recently. He started in P1. Stage 2 is his lowest position in P15, and he he got a P2 out of the race. So he's definitely moving in the right direction. And you and I were talking about this too, man. This is his sixth pole this year. So I was reading another fact about that, and Chase Briscoe has as many pole positions in his 23 race stint with Joe Gibbs as Martin Truex Jr. collected throughout his 216 races tenure with the organization. So that shows you a little bit of something about what this guy can do. I can't wait to see him start getting better and better and better. I think he's got a number of years to go, and he's going to be winning a lot of races, Kevin.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Truex obviously handed off a prestige ride with a great, great crew, great spotters, great crew chief. James Small does a great job on that pit box, and Chase Briscoe can drive. He's a blue collar guy. He loves just getting behind the wheel, getting after it. Tony Stewart saw some grit in him, and this is a big opportunity, and he hasn't let him down. I mean, 6 poles, it's just incredible. A lot of top fives. He's in the hunt. Joe Gibbs Toyotas, they expect to be in the playoffs, and he's running at a championship caliber. He can turn it on at any moment. So I think the 19 is definitely in good position. And then the other Toyota I wanted to mention was Bubba Wallace. I mean, 2 laps down, Jeff, he got nudged there by John Hunter Nemechek, pretty much shoved him right into the wall, blew out the right rear toe link, goes down 2 laps, gets back on the lead lap, and drives it up for a P6 finish. I think that's worth an honorable mention for sure, coming off of his Indy win.
Yeah, absolutely. As Lee Diffie likes to call him, old Bubber Wallace. It's funny how Lee Diffie. I know I complained about him last year, and I'll do it again just because I can. He doesn't know how to pronounce his R's when they're there, but he pronounces them when they're not there. So to see old Bubber Wallace be able to do that was pretty damn cool. With those Toyotas. As far as Joe Gibbs, it's cool to see Chase Briscoe get that P2. And Seabell, even though he got that spin, but he came in P17. Ty Gibbs got a P21, and Denny Hamlin had a P24. So as far as Joe Gibbs racing overall, man, Chase Briscoe, he's just crushing it. So, and I'm glad to see it. I mean, he's got a good attitude. I don't think he races anyone maliciously ever. Just seems to be a really cool driver, really cool guy. And like I said, I think he's going to go far.
Yeah, when we mentioned the Toyotas, and obviously a Chevy won this race for the Cup side, but honorable mention and shout out to Sam Mayer down there at the Xfinity level. This is the first win for Ford in the Xfinity Series this year. It's been dominated by the JRM Chevrolets and the JGR Toyotas. So for that Haas Automotive Group, after losing the Tony Stewart alliance, and of course, this is a big opportunity for Sam Mayer coming from Junior Motorsports, getting into a Ford and bringing him to victory lane. That's a big deal for those guys. So shout out to Ford and the Xfinity side.
Yeah, Ford, Penske had a pretty good run at it, with the 12 car, Ryan Blaney coming in P4 and the 22 of Joey Logano coming in P9. And the worst finish they had this weekend was the number 2 car, and he came in P12. So Ryan Blaney was up there. But yeah, you're right. It's been dominated this year by the Toyotas and the Chevys. So it's good to see Ford out there. They're starting to come up a little bit. But it's almost too late. A lot of these guys, you have to win or you're in. Like you said, the only person that's truly safe right now, I think, is Tyler Reddick. Other than that, it's up for grabs.
Yeah, I would say so, unless, barring anything happens, right? I mean, if Reddick goes out and has 3 DNFs, which I don't see happening, possibly at Daytona, but that would be the only thing that I think could really swing him out of pointing his way in. I mean, I think 23XI has been getting better. We see the speed out of Bubba. He's got the monkey off his back with a win, so he can just go out and race hard and try and rack up another win, possibly at Daytona or, who knows, these road course packages seem to be improving. SVG, don't forget, was with Colleague Racing last year running that cup because he was running full-time Xfinity. So he was in the 16 last year for Colleague, and now he's coming back with obviously with Trackhouse, and he's won 3 times on the road courses this year. So different team, different car, but same driver. So I think SVG is definitely going to be on the radar this weekend. But before we get completely into the Glen, I still wanted to cover some things with Richmond here. I mean, Jeff, the first stage, we heard Alan Gustafson come on the radio and go, he knew that they were going to be speeding before they were speeding. We saw the 48 get nabbed. We saw the 60 get nabbed. And it was interesting because it was our second time going here. They were kind of explaining it, Steve Letarte, how on the curves, what we see at Martinsville, we see it at Bristol, we see it here at Iowa, and we see it at Phoenix. They can speed up a little bit on pit road, but these guys were getting nailed on the straightaway portion of pit road. And both the 48 and the 60 said, I don't know what you guys are seeing. We're going slow enough. And so obviously we know NASCAR allows for a 4.99 miles per hour over their set speed limit. So if pit road speed is 45, you can go 49.99. But those guys, I mean, good call by Gustafson there. He knew it when they came down to test speed before we took the green that we were speeding there.
Yeah, like I said, it's really tough on that one. And one other shout out for old Bubba Wallace, though. This is his third consecutive top 10 finish. So I think he's gaining some momentum there. So, something we're gonna have to watch for, coming up on these last couple of races. I don't know if he's gonna do that well during the road courses, but he's definitely doing good. But yeah, Letarte, I love how he calls the races. I really do. He does a damn good job. But it, I just can't keep thinking about Chase Briscoe and how dominating he's actually been. Obviously last week, it's almost like he gave it up to his boss in a way because he didn't want to wreck him. So he could get some points out of it, but tried for him to get the win, with a lot of stuff going on. It's really cool to see Brad Keselowski getting up there and getting that stage 1 and 2 win. But like you said, man, he's definitely got to win or he is not in the playoffs. So I'm kind of curious on who's going to get there as far as winning, because if we've got right now 5 different drivers that have multiple wins, who's going to be the next one to get a multiple win? I mean, it could be Chase Briscoe. Bubba Wallace could come in and do it. Obviously SVG is going to be my call on it, but Chris Buescher, he could win this for sure. So I think next week's going to be really fun.
It is. I mean, definitely very different than this short track package. I'd say one takeaway from this weekend, and even listen to what Denny Hamlin had to say, who Denny did not have a good day. I mean, he spun, he was in the back, he drove back to the front, he was mid-pack. I mean, his day was kind of up and down. The right front tire got corded. So for him, it just wasn't the day that he was looking for out of that 11 car with a P24 finish. But, I think Denny's going to be a much bigger threat at Richmond, which runs very similar to Iowa. But the big takeaway, I think, is that this package is still just not there yet. The passing was so difficult. The tires did not fall off. So Goodyear did not bring a soft enough tire, in my opinion. We just did not see the fall off. These guys were able to run the same lap times. I mean, we saw it at the end. It came down to fuel mileage. 24, he can't even get around the lap cars. And then that's at what point Rudy Fugle just said, back it up, back it up. But with the lag, the downforce is just not there for these guys to be able to put the horsepower down and get these passes that, coming out of the corner. The only way Keselowski was able to get around, for the lead there a couple times was he had to get out of the groove. He had to take the air off the right rear. I mean, it's so difficult to pass with this short track package. And we've seen times where it's improved, over the season. I'm optimistic that Richmond is going to be much different. I'm not saying that we brought a poor product to Iowa, but the short track package is definitely not where it needs to be.
Yeah, you kind of brought up a good point there as far as, Rudy Fugle telling William Byron, hey, save me some gas, save me some gas. And, you were watching the monitor there and in the turns, he was totally let off the throttle. Not a damn thing on the pedal, man. He just let it coast through. And then once he got on the straightaway, he was only running half throttle and he was still not losing any lap time whatsoever. I mean, Chase Briscoe and Brad Keselowski couldn't catch up with him. Ryan Blaney was trying to pass Brad towards the end there, but just didn't have enough juice to get past him. There's about 7-8 good laps where he was trying to get him, just couldn't do it. So yeah, the passing definitely wasn't there. And being able to save as much fuel as William Byron did on those last 8 to 10 laps, not even running, full, not even half throttle on the straightaway and just coasting basically through the turns, really amazed me, Kevin.
Yeah, it was great fuel strategy by those guys. And let's not forget that 51 laps were under caution. So basically, the ratio that they like to throw out, which I don't know if it's completely 2-to-1, but that's just basic math. The way they can hold the clutch in, they can shut the motor down on those caution laps versus a green flag lap. He was able to go 143 laps under green, and yellow to, really stretch out the fuel mileage of what they got in there. And that's assuming that they packed it completely full of fuel. I mean, we were watching on the broadcast, they had these little percentage meters, with 10 to go, they were showing Byron with 1% fuel left in the tank. And like I said, he was still able to go the distance. So those calculations, I don't think they're just not accurate. We know they're close, but they're not as accurate as they, he's going to run out with 10 to go. And he still has enough to do the burnout. So that's one thing I'll say with this next gen car. The fuel miles, they're able to stretch it much further than we saw with even the Xfinity cars or the old Cup cars. These guys they're able to find it. I don't know if it's the aerodynamics, if it's the design of the car, the 5-speed sequential gearbox, but they're able to stretch distances that we've just never seen before at the Cup level.
And also listening to the back and forth between on the 24 car between William Byron and Rudy Fugle. He heard him tell him to save fuel, and we know that they've got that switch to go to the reserve tank where they've got about 1 gallon left. And I didn't hear him even tell him to switch. I didn't hear him tell him to switch it to the reserve. So I don't know if he had not switched it over yet at all, because when they were showing those monitors of how much fuel these guys have as far as percentages left in their tank, he definitely had the least amount of fuel than anybody. And I don't know if he'd switched it over to that reserve or not. Maybe that's why he had enough for the burnout, but somehow he just got it done.
Yeah, and they might not have broadcasted that, but I would be almost certain that Fugle had him flip that reserve switch on at least with the one to go. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to run it that close without hitting your reserve, I think would be a huge roll of the dice. With one to go, you got to next flag ends the race, so you got to go to the reserve at that point. Whether they wreck them or wreckers or checkers, once you see that white flag, you're flipping it, because how many times have we saw it at Indianapolis? We saw Dale Earnhardt Jr. lose an iconic Coca-Cola 600 race coming through turns 3 and 4. Steve Letarte will never forget that race when Kevin Harvick blew by him for the win. That's the worst, is when you lose the race coming off 3 and 4 on a fuel mileage. But he wasn't wiggling the car. It never really got that low. And Byron didn't seem that worried about it in the car. He's like, I'm running 3/4 throttle down the straightaway, and still keeping lap time with Ryan Blaney, who was charging through the field. So that's just what was crazy about this Goodyear tire. There was no fall off.
Yeah, so Ryan Blaney, that's a good point, man, because like he was able to do some passing. He really was, until he got up to that P4 position and was trying to pass Brad and in the 6 car, and he just couldn't quite get it done.
Yeah, it's just been interesting to see these fuel mileage races and how the broadcast is calculating it versus we're actually seeing it. That's one thing I heard Denny Hamlin say, is that, Fugle has way more understanding of the burn rate than we're going to see on a broadcast, of course. I mean, those guys are doing what they, the best they can. And so far, I mean, it's hard to judge USA on their first week. I'm not thrilled about Lee Diffie. I know a lot of people aren't. I'll be the first to say I was not a big fan of him last year. Now, that said, I think he's a tremendous voice for motorsports. He's just great in F1. He's great in Indy, and he's educated on NASCAR. He knows what he's talking about. I just don't love him as a lead call, play-by-play guy. I'd be fine put him down in the pits. Maybe have him run the pre-show, something like that. I'm not saying kick the guy out, but I'd much rather bring back a Rick Allen or have Marty Snyder or some of these other voices up as the lead play-by-play caller. Hell, put me up there.
Right? I'd rather have you up there than Lee Diffie too. I mean, yeah, you're right, man. He does have the knowledge. He's great, for like I said, F1 or Indy. He's got the voice, he's got the knowledge, and he's got the knowledge for NASCAR. But this is a grassroots sports. I mean, I know it's gotten a lot bigger, since we first started watching it, and even before that, when it was just a Southern good old boys type of thing. But to hear Lee Diffie just talk, I mean, it's like, I'm here in America, and I don't want to sound like I'm having to listen to a race like I'm down under or in Europe or some shit like that. It's just the way he calls things. Like I said earlier in the cast just a minute ago, it's like he knows how to pronounce. He doesn't know how to pronounce the R's when they're in a word, but if it's not in the word, he adds it to them.
Growing up in New England where I did, it's not uncommon for us to hear a similar accent. In the sense of, in New England, you'll hear a lot of people lose their car keys, but then they'll go down to the market and get a pizza. Right. So New England kind of has some of that same dialect with the R's and the A's and stuff. But we're just being nitpicky at this point. I think Jeff Burton, Steve Letarte, I mean, those guys do great commentary. I love Dale Jarrett, down on the pit box there, and their infield setup, Marty Schneider, Dave Burns. I mean, there's some good names that they have on this team so far. I just think Prime set the bar so high that now we're holding everyone to a Prime standard. And I'm telling you, man, I think when they renegotiate these broadcasting contracts here in the next few months, I think Prime could very well take over this sport almost and go, Fox will open up the season and then hand it off to Prime to run it the rest of the year.
Yeah, Prime, they really did set the bar. They really kicked ass. By far the best broadcasting that we saw this entire year so far. They just, it set it at a whole new level. They just had, the whole team was great, whether it was, play by play or the pits or, pre and post game, pre-race, post-race, whatever. They just did a damn fine job on it. And I think we're going to see a lot more races on Prime, which goes back to, this having to do subscriptions. So, hey, it is what it is at this point. We'll just have to deal with old Lee Diffie the rest of the season, I guess. But, I don't know. I just wish that they'd switch it up a little bit. Like I said, I think putting Rick Allen back up there would be the way to go.
Well, I didn't think he got a fair deal to begin with. I mean, a lot of guys got screwed at NBC Sports. I mean, that's the main reason why you're not seeing Dale Earnhardt Jr. on this half of the season. I mean, Letarte obviously carried over and Junior didn't. I mean, once Junior signed the deal with Prime, NBC was like, "You're out of here," and that's why Junior hasn't been involved with NBC. And Rick Allen just got the boot, right in the middle of the broadcast. The next week they're like, "Well, we're bringing in Lee Diffie," and that's the end of it. And Rick Allen, as far as I know, according to my research, he doesn't have any involvement with NASCAR broadcasting. I mean, with his credentials, he could probably pick something up at a local short track or a radio gig, but I think he got the boot there and kind of got screwed out of that deal. But that's NASCAR broadcasting. It is what it is. Subscription services, all those things are going to be HBO Max and Prime, and that's just the future of how people are going to get their sports. But now we're going.
Unfortunate. It's unfortunate, man. It's like I still miss Race Hub, man. I really do. With Daniel Trotta back in the day, it's like all of a sudden it's just Kevin Harvick's happy hour, and all of a sudden that's just kind of taken over. And nothing to say anything bad about Kevin Harvick and happy hour and all that. But Race Hub was a great broadcast. That was my go-to after every Monday, man. That's what I'd be watching, getting a lot of my information from. It was Race Hub, and to not have that for the last couple of years, it sucked.
Yeah, it kind of has. I mean, it opens up the door for us here at Mash the Gas to try to bring the viewers and the listeners a different way to get their information, and that's just the way the world's going. It's going towards podcasts and different broadcasts, and there's a lot of them out there. So we got to stay with the times or get left behind, buddy. But we're on to Watkins Glen, upstate New York, beautiful part of the country. And we're going road course racing. Watkins Glen and Sonoma have always been two of my favorites. I mean, it's just a staple. I mean, Jeff Gordon dominated there. Tony Stewart dominated there. The greats, right? Bill Elliott had some wins there. And it's just a great racetrack. It's a huge staple of our sport. We've been going there for so long. And, there's a lot of other, Formula One and the Cars Series and IMSA and, all Indy, have all run here at Watkins Glen. It's a great layout. I like that we run the short, quote unquote, short layout and not the full F1 layout that we've seen in the past. But when we, like we mentioned earlier, Chris Buescher did win this race a year ago. This is a 92 lap race. He led 19 laps. SVG came in P2, only led 1 lap. Ross Chastain, Jeff, led 51 laps here last year. And we don't typically picture Chastain as a road course guy. Now, does that carry over to this year? We'll see. I mean, and you go back 2 years ago, Jeff, to the 2023 race there, William Byron won this race. So, the Hendrick Chevys could be good. I'm going to stay away from them. I'm going to run my road course guys this week. Denny Hamlin finished second there 2 years ago. We don't typically see him as a road course guy. AJ Allmendinger, we got to go with the Dinger road course ringer, Jeff.
And if you're going to keep, not as running as many Chevys as normal, you also have to look at obviously Michael McDowell. He finished P7 there last year. But hey, Carson Hocevar, he got P3. This is a race. Maybe he won't piss someone off and he might get another top 5. Because you're right. It's a great course. I really do like Watkins Glen. It's one of the funnest ones to watch as far as road courses go. And then, to what you were kind of saying a minute ago about the greats that have won there so many times, like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart. We've talked about this before. This is when NASCAR used to run only 2 road course tracks the entire season, and to have that many wins in one season compared to as many road courses as that we have now. Like I said, with Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart winning as many as they did, and all we had, was Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Now we've got so many others, and they just keep adding them. We haven't really even talked about San Diego's definitely getting a road course. Mexico's apparently not out of the picture, but I think it is.
No, it's out.
It's out. So what, they're going to keep Chicago again?
Nope, Chicago's out. So Chicagoland's coming back next year. That's confirmed. The Oval and the San Diego Coronado Naval Base is confirmed.
That is confirmed. Oh, hey, also, I did hear that Connor Zolich is definitely replacing Daniel Suarez with Trackhouse for next year.
Yeah, we pretty much did know that, and we are short on time. But when we left last week, Jeff, we weren't sure what they were going to do with Austin Hill. NASCAR, you made the right call by suspending him. That was the right move. That sends a message. It resets his playoff points, Jeff, but does not remove his playoff eligibility. So he will still join the playoffs, but he will lose all of those bonus points going in. So a little bit of an uphill battle for him. Obviously, Austin Dillon filled into that 21 car, and RCR is not going to appeal it. So Watkins Glen coming up, Jeff. Who is your pick going in? I'm going to guess that Sky would have picked, I don't know who she would have picked. She probably would have went Chris Buescher, maybe.
Think she'd go Chris Buescher? I mean, I know she's called him out before. She'd probably go with Chris Buescher.
Either that or Michael McDowell.
Or Michael. Yeah, we'll give her. We'll pick him 4. We'll give her 2 picks. We'll give her Michael McDowell and Chris Buescher. But as far as my pick, I've been saying it already through the whole race, and I'm going to take it probably from you. Old Gizzy, man. I think Gizzy's going to get it again and to get his 4th win of the year, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I am going to go a little bit out of left field here. I'm going to go Christopher Bell. I think Seabell he's won on road courses before. I don't think it's foreign to him to win on a road course and get a little shot in the arm here to get a little momentum before the playoffs.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, I'm going the 20th Seabell.
Well, he finished their P14 last year, so we'll see what we got for him, Kevin.
Yep. We're on to Watkins Glen. I think there's still tickets available, so if you're, catch it quick enough, get out there, have some fun. That's just a great racetrack, great part of the country, great time of year to be out there at this road course. Definitely looking forward to it. Full weekend coming up. We got the trucks there. We got ARCA there on Friday, Xfinity Series Saturday, and Cup Sunday. Looks like what is that? 2 p.m. Eastern on the Cup race up there at Go Bowling at the Glen. So be sure to go out there and do some bowling here at the old Watkins Glen, Jeff. And we'll be back.
You got it. You got to go do some bowling, Kevin.
You got to get it in, man. So
you got to go. You got to go, man. But I'll tell you what, man, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it certainly is. We got 2 more road courses between now and Phoenix, this one, and then, of course, the Roval in the playoffs. So, SVG, let's see what you can do. You took my pick, Jeff. I'm going Seabell, Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell. I think those are all great picks. And don't sleep on Dinger, the road course ringer. That's all the time we have, folks. Join us next Monday. NASCARSky will be back with us. The trio will be reunited. Be sure to follow us on social media at Mash the Gas. Follow NASCARSky at NASCARSky. Mash that subscribe button, whether you're listening on YouTube or any other platform that you follow us on. And until then, Jeff.
Mash the gas.
I feel the engine screaming back. I feel the sweat